3 of Annie Finch's lectures. This is Dr. Annie Finch. You all know her. You've seen her read, you've read her work. Some of you have talked to her in person. As you know, Annie is an award-winning poet. She has edited or authored over 18 poems, essays, and anthologies. She's quite famous and she's quite fabulous. So welcome to our class. This is Creative Writing 302.
Thank you.
Yay!
So today we're on lecture 3. This is the third lecture of a series of 5 plus an introduction, but there are 5 main lectures, one on each of the 5 basic meters in poetry, and we're going to talk about what that is in a minute. We haven't done a lot of poetry in this class yet, so we'll be doing a little recap about meter, and then we're going to talk about a particular meter, a rhythm that is the Trocheic meter, which I call the rhythm of earth. This is why I'm wearing all green and brown today, earth colors, because this is the rhythm that really gets you into connecting with the grounded power of the earth. It's a wonderful rhythm. You have a handout, and all of the poems in the handout are written in that same rhythm, the Trocheic rhythm. So over here we have a little recap, and you're going to get a definition sheet that has more details about this information. But basically, when we talk about meter, we're talking about the music of poetry specifically involving the rhythms. So when I say specifically involving the rhythms, out of that phrase, there's going to be 3 syllables that are stronger than the others. Can anyone tell me which ones they are? Specifically involving the rhythms. Specifically involving the rhythms. Which syllables are the ones that really get you? And just syllables now, we're not talking words like specifically. There's 5 of them in that, right? Specifically. So specifically involving the rhythms. What syllables do you hear?
I heard
Yeah,
the beginning.
it's both the beginning. Okay. Anybody else? Specifically involving the rhythms.
Is it for all 3 words or just the?
Yeah, for all 3 words. Okay. Some people might have heard the specific, right? What about the word involving? Involved, yeah. And the word rhythms. Is it the first syllable or the second? Only 2 syllables. Rhythm. Rhythm, yeah. And if you ever get confused, you can just do reverse exaggeration. Is it rhythm or rhythm? And that will make it pretty clear. So that's what meter is about, the regular patterns of that accented, strong syllables, soft syllables, strong syllables, soft syllables. So whenever we get to a regular repeating pattern, we call that a foot. And so there are 5 different feet being discussed in this, being discussed in this lecture series, and the one we're doing today is called the Trochee, and that one has this beautiful pattern like this. So if you look at your sheet, you look at the poems on the sheet, you'll see this is the big ones, like rhythm. This is actually the scansion of the word rhythm. And the third definition we have here, scansion, is when you mark the rhythm of a word, you mark the meter of a word by using these symbols here. Wand, cup, edge. Only 3 syllables. The wand looks like this, the cup looks like this, and the edge is a straight line. So we have rhythm. When you hear that strong syllable, you mark it with this accent over it. And then the other one, the softer one, gets a little U over it, cup. So rhythm. And then when you have a repeating pattern, you put this mark here that I call an edge in between them. So example, I'm just gonna do something I love to do sometimes, it's called bibliomancy. When you open a book or some kind of writing and just close your eyes and just like pick a word, you ever do that? And just kind of see what it says. Sometimes people use that for divination instead of like tarot or something. They just open any book and go, they do this in Iran, around New Year's Eve, they often do it with the poetry of Rumi. It's really wonderful. So I'm going to do it with here right now. Actually, why doesn't somebody else do it? Anybody can volunteer to do bibliomancy with me right now? Just close your eyes and pick a word out of the sheet. Okay. Yes?
Accept.
Accept. Okay, cool. Okay, let's actually get your whole line. The line that you have.
Want no sound except the song.
The
Want no sound except the song.
want no sound except the song. Beautiful, thank you. Okay. Want no sound except the song. Okay, want no sound except the song. Now tell me which syllables are going to get the stronger stress. And one simple way to hear it, you always want to hear it, you don't want to think, you want to hear, listen, use your body. A simple way to do it is saying all together. So let's try saying this line together 3 times. Okay, we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, we're going to say it all aloud, and as you're saying it aloud, listen to where you're hearing the strong beats that we should put the one on, the strong syllables, okay? 1, 2, 3.
Want no sound except the song. Want no sound except the song. Want no sound except the song.
Whew. Okay, so where are we going to put our wands? Meter is magic. Are you getting this already? They come from the same root word. We go back far enough. Meter and magic both come from this root word, this one. In the Proto-European language, the asterisk means that they don't even, it's so old they don't even have the word, but they hypothesize it based on the other words that came from it that they do know about. They assume this common answer, it means power. Power. And from this root word meaning power, in Proto-European, Proto-Indo-European, we get the word meter and the word magic. This is kind of magic. You felt it, right? It's like if you're doing a spell, you know, you read some, or you watch a movie about witches or something, when they do the spell, it's always got that beat to it, right? So, meter, magic. Another great word that comes from there is mother. It shows you the power, and the word mighty. So it's all about the power of magic. So, okay, want no sound except the song. Where are we going to put our wands? Where are the strong syllables?
Like the T and want.
Okay, this is actually one syllable, so we can put it over the whole thing. It's a want. Perfect. Okay, and the T gets more emphasis because it's a consonant like that, but it's the whole thing. Okay, what's the next word?
Sound.
Sound, yeah? Okay, next one. This one's trickier because it's one syllable, not a word. Somebody
Song.
hasn't spoken yet?
Song.
Accept. Oh, song, for sure, song. Yeah, they're very strong. That's the strongest one of all. There's another one too, though. What? Yeah? Accept, exactly. Perfect, yep. Accept the song. And one interesting thing is, when you're doing this on your own, when you're marking the patterns of meter, you'll notice that not everyone is going to be as strong as the others. Like accept was a little bit softer, but it's still bigger than what's next to it. That is very important. And what we call this is called stress or accent. I'll add that up here too. Stress or accent. These syllables are longer, louder, and sometimes higher pitched than the other syllables. You might hear it longer, you might hear it louder, you might hear higher pitched, but those are the ways that they get emphasis. So when you hear that emphasis, it might only be relative to what's next to it. So here we have except, the sept is bigger than this and bigger than this, right? It might be smaller than this one, but that's okay. It's still bigger than what's next to it. So this is the idea that stress is relative, meaning it's relative to what's next to it. So sometimes you might hear one that's not quite as strong as the others. Just notice what's next to it. If it's stronger than what's next to it, then you're good. So, okay. One, no sound except the song. So we did a first step. What we're doing here is called scansion. It's a three-step process. We just did step one, which is you put the wands. So scansion, as we see, is finding and marking the meter. It's just how we find the thing that's already there in the music of poetry, but scansion is how we hear it, we find it, we mark it down so we can see what it is. We acknowledge it, we recognize it, and we honor it too in that process. So scansion has three steps. The first step is to mark the wands. Second step, what do you think the second step might be? Here's our symbols. Second step, put the cups in, yeah. And the third step is the edges. So 3 steps, we just did step 1. So for step 2 is very easy. We simply just put the cups in where we don't have any wands yet on the other syllables. So tell me where to put my cups.
No.
No? X. Yeah, and the, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and X gets a little more, right, than the, but it's okay because stress is relative. Okay, so now, in between here, before you put the edges, you don't just put the edges in, you look for a pattern and add the edges. That's actually more accurate. So for step 3, once you put in your wands and your cups, you look at what you got, and you're like, okay, well, where's the regular pattern? Do I see anything regular happening? Do I see something that's repeating? So what do we have here? Wand, cup, wand, cup, wand, cup, wand. So what do we see that's repeating quite a bit in the line?
T.
The what?
With the letter?
The letter T is repeating. Well, lots of letters are repeating, right? But we have a very regular repetition of a pattern. We have wand, cup, wand, cup, wand, cup. So something's repeating there. What is the thing that's repeating? Wand cup. So wand cup is actually, okay, we look for the pattern and we put in the edges. We put an edge, straight line, smack down through every time it repeats. And you put it between the syllables. And we call this a foot. A foot is when you have this repeating pattern of wands and cups. So, once you hear it in one line, you can start to notice it in other lines of the poem. And it's not always going to be exactly the same. Sometimes there might be a little variety, and that's one of the great joys of scansion is when you can experience how does it change and why, and it can be an incredible experience. So let's take another line in the same poem. This was County Collins Heritage, and take another line in the same poem, and just somebody else want to do the bibliomancy? Just close your eyes and pick another line from the same poem by County Collins. It's a nice long poem. We got 3 pages of it, 4 pages. So from any page, pick another line. Yep.
My conversation came
Tell us which page you're on.
the third page of the poem.
Okay, my conversation.
It's a bit towards the end. Came high price.
My conversion came high priced. Yeah, my conversion came high priced. I belong to Jesus Christ, preacher of humility. Heathen gods are not to me. A very interesting moment in this poem by County Cullen he's writing about being a black man in 1925 in this culture where he's really pulled between belonging to the American culture and connecting back with his roots of his family in Africa, and how does he make peace with all of this. It's a very important poem. There's a beautiful recording of Tony Martin, Maya Angelou reading this aloud. It's so beautiful. But yeah, my conversion came high price. The conversion to Christianity, he gave up a lot, and his people gave up a lot to convert to Christianity. My conversion came high priced. Okay, so let's do the same scanning. My conversion came high priced. Where do you hear the strongest? My. Yep. Burn. Yep. Came. Okay, this one's a little different. High priced. It's hard to pick one, isn't it? So if you're thinking hard, you might think, oh, I just want it to look like this next one, and then it would be what now, Micon, Soundex, version, came high, Septha, but it's really more like came high price, like both of them get it, right? So that's a variation that is worth paying attention to. Okay, so now that's step one. We put in all the ones, and you put them in exactly the way you hear them. That's really important. So we heard 2 here, we put in 2. Even though we know it's in the same poem, we might expect that same one cup. We're not going to mark that. We're going to mark what we actually hear. My conversion came high price. Let's put the cups in now. Hun, Jen, Chen. Okay, that's it, right? Okay, interesting. Okay, so now we're going to put in our edges. So do you see anything that repeats? Just 2, right? My conversion. Okay, so here we don't have it. However, we do have a pattern where, based on all the other lines in the poem, most of them are very regular, like this one, right? So we could imagine putting one right there, an edge that shows us the difference between this line and the basic pattern. So the basic pattern is 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, or actually 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1. But here there's a slight variation, and when we put in the edge, we can see what he did. He put an emphasis on high there. So it's interesting to think about why he did that at that exact moment. If you look through most of the rest of the poem, you don't have many variations, but here, is there a reason we can think about it? My conversion came high priced. When you have to say that line and you come to that different syllable, what's the experience you have? Remember when we read the other one aloud together? Let's do that with this line too. Let's say it 3 times aloud together. And notice what happens in your mouth when you say it. Notice what happens in your body when you say it. Notice how different it is to say this line than it was to say the other one. Okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
My conversion came high price. My conversion came high price.
What do you notice when you get to that syllable high? It's different, right?
I feel like it makes it like emphasize, and then
Yeah.
like the long I sounds too. Really
Right. The 2 I's in a row, high price. So often with a great poem like this, the meter goes along with this other music that's going on. Yeah. So you say it's slower, right? Because you just had it. Imagine if it was my conversion came at price. My conversion came at price. My conversion came at price. Fast, like the other ones. But this is my conversion came high priced. You have to slow down. You have to put extra effort into it. Well, what's he talking about right there? High price, right? Extra high price, extra effort, extra, what he had to do to convert to Christianity as someone who identifies as a man with African roots, So it gives you, this is the beauty of scansion right here. And I didn't plan this line. You all picked it in there, Nancy, right? You could take any line in this poem and any line in this whole packet that has a variation in it, and we could do the same thing because these are great poems. These are good. A couple of mine in here too. I think they're great too. But you know, when meter is really working, every syllable is eloquent. Every syllable in the meter is giving you extra information all the time. And so you don't even have to plan it. You can trust it. It's like magic. This is why I think meter and magic really belong in the same, no wonder they come from the same root, because you wouldn't think it. You'd think, okay, well, these are words. We think about words with our minds. But here is something that nobody thought about. These poets didn't think about it. They let their bodies talk, and the bodies talk with words, but it's like happening between the bodies and the minds, and you can't really tell which is which, and they're both together, and it just creates something brand new. And I never, ever get bored looking at a great poem and just looking at the expansion of it, seeing how the rhythm works, and it's like, wow, look at that, that's different, why? And then you go back and you look at the rest of the poem, and you find the other places. If you scan his entire poem, you find the other places where he does this with an extra syllable. This is called a spondee, by the way. I'll give you the feet in a minute. I'll give you the feet over here. So we have the feet, two there. Trochee, iamb, dactyl, manifest, and spondee, that's one too. So most of this, all the poems in this packet are trochees. They're one cup, but he's varied it with the spondee, 1-1. And every time you find a variation, you're going to find in a great poem, like there's a reason for it. It's amazing. Okay, so we could do this with any of these poems. But I want to talk about something specific today that has to do with the language of meter, because we are in a series of lectures here. I've already done 2 lectures on meter before, and this was a little bit of a recap, so you can go back and watch the others. But I want to really talk about a new idea today that has to do with the language of meter, the way that different meters can speak to us in this incredibly mysterious way. So I have a PhD from Stanford University, and I was a poet when I got there. And as a poet, I was reading a poem one day by Emily Dickinson. And it's a famous poem, maybe you've even heard it. It's called After Great Pain, a Formal Feeling Comes. And I was sitting in a poetry workshop like this one. The teacher brought in this poem, After Great Pain, a Formal Feeling Comes. And I'm looking at the poem, and I suddenly thought to myself, oh wow, that line is in iambic pentameter. It's in a meter. And she's talking about how horrible it is to write iambic pentameter, how it hurts. And I understood that because I was a poet and I was trying to write iambic pentameter, and it was painful, it hurt. Why? Why would writing a meter hurt? Well, unlike this wonderful meter of the earth, iambic pentameter, as I talked about in the last lecture, is a meter that has a lot of baggage behind it. It's got a lot of imperialist baggage, capitalist baggage, sexist baggage, racist baggage. If you look at the history of poetry in English, you probably are aware of this. Most of the poetry in meter is in iambic pentameter. And in fact, the reason that we're all writing free verse nowadays is basically because in the beginning of the 20th century, around 1912, Ezra Pound and some other modernists decided we've had it with iambic pentameter, and as Ezra Pound said, breaking the pentameter was the first heave. This was the meter that had been used in Paradise Lost to basically convert the world to Christianity, the Western world to Christianity. It's the reason that Kenneth Cohen says my conversion came high price. That high price was an iambic pentameter high price. You'll recognize the meter. It's the meter of Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day, right? Or the beginning of Paradise Lost. of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe. Of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe. Milton took the story of Adam and Eve and he turned it into iambic pentameter in order to create like the epic forever that was going to dominate the Western world. And it did dominate for about 500 years. And at the beginning of the 20th century, these poets were like, fuck that. We don't want iambic pentameter anymore. We're sick of this thing. So they broke it down, right? Okay, the problem is, what happened was they broke down all of the meters with it, because basically that was the only meter that was around, because Milton did such a good job dominating the world with iambic pentameter. So, for a poet like me, who loves rhythm, writing iambic pentameter was painful. It was like, it brought out all that garbage, right? And so I believe this is one of the reasons that a lot of poets don't write in meter anymore right nowadays. You know, people say, oh, meter's old hat, sometimes they say that, you know. You might as well write free verse, that's what poets do nowadays. And meanwhile, you listen to rap music, it's all meter, it's all meter. And a lot of it is dactyls and trochees, just like this, these really great rhythms. They're not iambic pentameter, they're like, you know, really wonderful meters that are just as great, just as important, just as powerful. So a lot of what I'm teaching in these lectures, you see I'm doing 5 lectures on 5 different meters, and one of the main purposes of these lectures is to share the idea of metrical diversity, is what I call it. I've got 5 different meters. This tattoo here has got 5 different colors on it. I've got each meter has its own color. We've got the anapes, the iambs, the dactyls, the trochees, and the amphibrachts. And they all sound different, and they're all really great, really cool, and they're all equally important. So, and I have associations with them. It's like we've got earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. We've got east, west, north, south, and center. I mean, we've got like the whole pattern of these 5 meters. And, you know, it's a great big picture. But most of the world is not going to have that big picture yet. They're just talking about iambic pentameter, or else like let's not have any meter at all, because iambic pentameter was too much of a drag, so we just threw it all out, right? So this is where it comes back to me. Getting my PhD at Stanford University, I've been sitting there in this workshop in my MFA program, thinking, wow, iambic pentameter is horrible, it sucks. Emily Dickinson thought so too. And that's why she wrote, after great pain a formal feeling comes in iambic pentameter. So I thought, let me check that out. So I started scanning, just like we were doing right here. I scanned every word of Emily Dickinson. She wrote 1,776 poems approximately. I scanned them all. And I took notes on every single line of iambic pentameter. And there weren't very many, there were only like 100. And all those almost 2,000 poems, it was mostly shorter lines, iambic tetrameter, or trimeter, short lines. But iambic pentameter, this big nasty meter that everybody says is like the most important meter in English, she only had like 100 lines, and I looked at those 100 lines, and they all said things like after great pain. They were all about like pain and oppression and agony and the admiration, the contempt of time, and all these horrible things. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. She wasn't thinking about that when she wrote those lines, but she wrote these lines to reflect this really bad feeling she didn't write. I was like, what about other poets? So I did the same thing with Walt Whitman. You know, Leaves of Grass, I scanned every single line of Walt Whitman to find out what his iambic pentameters were like. Same thing. They were like, except because he was like, maybe because he was a man, she was a woman, whatever, they were a lot more arrogant. Like sometimes he'd be like, the first line of Leaves of Grass, that's a very famous like free verse poem, right? You'd never think, he doesn't know, he doesn't care about iambic pentameter. He's free, he's Walt Whitman. Guess what the first line of that poem is? I celebrate myself and sing myself. It's an iambic pentameter, just like Milton. Of man's first disobedience and the fruit. I celebrate myself and sing myself. Shall I compare the two a summer's day? He's writing in that meter the first line of Leaves of Grass to say, hey everybody, I'm a real poet, and now I'm going to throw it away, but I'm proving I'm a real poet by writing iambic pentameter. So for him it was not as, painful maybe as for Dickinson, but it came down to not very good, right? So I'm looking at all this, and this is how I began. This changed my life. That one day, sitting in that workshop, a workshop just like this, looking at Emily Dickinson's poem and thinking, she hated I am a pentameter. So I ended up writing the whole book. It was my PhD dissertation. It's called The Ghost of Meter. It's in print. You can find it now if you want to read this book, Ghost of Meter. And my basic idea that I developed in this book is that meter is a language, and it talks about, at the time I was not thinking about things like mind, body, will, heart, spirit. That was, 1990, a long time ago, so 30-something years ago. So I wasn't really thinking about, I hadn't developed it to that level yet, but I was really thinking about meter as a language that's unconscious, and I thought it had to do with culture and the history. So this is where we go back to the poems on our handout tonight. If you look at these poems, it's very interesting to go back and look at the ways this meter in particular, the trochee, has been used. So the trochee, the meter we're talking about today, is the opposite of the iamb, right? So you have iambic pentameter, if you had the opposite, the shadow, the dark side or whatever, the underside of the supposedly, believing it's a light dark thing is not my thinking, but it's like the Milton thing, right? It's all that dualistic thinking. The opposite of iambic is going to be trochaic, because iambic is like this, okay? Of man's first disobedience and the fruit. Blah, 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 blah. Like that. Trochees are, here's our familiar one, it's the exact opposite, right? So it's the shadow side. It's the shadow side. So look at Macbeth. Look at this section from Macbeth on your second page. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. You recognize that rhythm now? That's your trochees, right? This meter gets used a lot for spooky poems. Another famous example is Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary, double, bubble, toil and trouble. This trochee rhythm gets brought up when poets wanted to do something that was spooky or, the unconscious or something revolutionary. And so why would the great, great poet, African-American poet, like Gwendolyn Brooks, if you look at the second poem here, why would she choose this meter for her epic poem, which she published in 1949, The Ennead? She's a young poet. She wants to make a big mark in the world. She decides, actually she talks to one of her editors, and the editor says, if you want your first book to make a big impact, you need a long poem in there. So she's like, okay, I'm going to write a poem called The Ennead. Does that ring a bell? It sounds a little bit like another really famous poem from ancient Rome. Right. So she's like, okay, Virgil wrote about the Aeneid, he wrote about Aeneas. I'm going to write about a little black girl in Chicago named Annie Allen. I'm going to call it The Ennead. I'm going to make an epic around this little girl. So here it is. Think of sweet and chocolate, left to folly or to fate, whom the higher gods forgot, whom the lower gods berate. Physical and underfed, fancying on the feather bed, what would never end is not. What is ever end is not. Skipping, think of ripe and romp about, all her harvest button in, all her ornaments untried, waiting for the paladin, prosperous and ocean-eyed, who shall rub her secrets out and behold the hinted bride. Isn't it gorgeous? This incredible, complex, mysterious poet describing this little girl, sweet, chocolate, underfed, hungry, imagining something, imagining a better life, imagining a feather bed, wearing tatters, full of myths and stories. It's the story of how she meets this man who takes advantage of her and he goes off to war, and it's a tragic story. But here she is as a young girl, all her ornaments untried, waiting for the paladin, the man who will rub her secrets out and behold the hinted bride. That gives me shivers to rub her secrets out, for a young girl to be wanting that to happen to her. But of course, a lot of girls do want that. They want a man to come and change their lives by taking away their secrets. So why would she choose this meter, this trochaic meter, for her epic poem? Since this is the meter that, Macbeth had the witches, it's like the meter of the spooky and the unconscious. Or W.H. Auden, Lullaby. Look at the next page. This is one of my favorite poems. It's so beautiful. W.H. Auden is a fine poet, but I think this is by far his most moving poem. It's a love poem about being a gay man in the 1930s and he could have been arrested for being gay in the 1930s. Lay your sleeping head, my love, human on my faithless arm. Time and fevers burn away individual beauty from thoughtful children, and the grave proves the child ephemeral. But in my arms till break of day, let the living creature lie, mortal, guilty, but to me, the entirely beautiful. And skipping to the end, beauty, midnight vision dies, let the winds of dawn that blow softly round your dreaming head, such a day of welcome show, I in knocking heart may bless. Noons of dryness find you fed by the involuntary powers, nights of insult let you pass, watched by every human love. Totally worth reading the whole thing, hopefully aloud to someone that you love. Obviously, all of these poems in this packet are worth reading aloud over and over. But right now, why would Auden and Brooks, why would they choose for these important poems this meter here, this trochaic meter? And why did Canty Cullen use it for his heritage? If you look at the history of African American poetry in the 20th century, there is there are a lot of very, very important poems that use this meter, the trochaic meter. And it's an interesting thing to think about. So if you go back, these were poets who were certainly raised on as far as English poetry goes, they were raised on the tradition that iambic pentameter was the meter of strong poetry. So why didn't they choose it? Why did they choose this other meter? Look at William Wordsworth, I wandered lonely as a cloud. This is a very famous poem that I'm sure all these poets were likely to have learned at one point. Now this poem is an iambic, right? If we scan it, let's scan it because you've got the tools now to scan anything. You always use the same 3 steps, no matter what meter the poem's in, you're always going to use the same 3 steps. Wands, cups, look for the pattern, look for the edges, right? So let's just do the first 2 lines here. Everybody familiar with this poem? Have you ever seen this one before? It gets around. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high or veils and hills. So just try your scansion skills here. Put the wands over the strong syllables. And remember, stress is relative. So there might be a very small word, but if it's bigger than the syllables around it, or a small syllable, but if it's bigger than the syllables next to it, it still gets a wand. You might see an example of that in the first line, in fact. First step, you're going to do the wands. When you have wands on those first 2 lines, then put in your cups. And after you have all your wands and cups, then look for the repeating pattern and put your edges. And then tell me, of these meters here, these 5 rhythms, which one is this poem in? The trochee is 1 cup, the iamb is cup 1, the dactyl is 1 cup cup, and the anapest is cup 1. Which one is this? What pattern did you get?
I got the trochee.
The trochee, okay. So you have So for the trochee, you'd have one cup. So how would you read that first line as trochee's then?
I wandered lonely as a cloud.
Okay, so what about the first syllable? Is that a cup or a line? The I.
I said wand.
Okay, so I wandered, like that? Okay, got it, okay. And what about the second line? That's ones?
Oh, I would look that one.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, because when you, try the second line and see if you get the same thing. I'll give you one little, I'll give one little clue is that when you have a word of more than one syllable, then it always has at least one line in it. Like, that's sort of a little trick. Anybody have a scansion for either the first two lines or the last two lines of that stanza?
The last line is a mess, I mean.
The last line is different,
It's
isn't it?
different, it's really different.
Yeah, but that's good, it's good that you noticed it because sometimes people just pretend it's the same as the others and they go fluttering and dancing in the rhythm, they just ignore their ear. So you didn't do that, that's a good thing, that it came out a mess. So what did you get in terms of lines and cups for that one? Actually, we'll get to it in a minute.
I got, like a stress and then two cups and then an iambic
Yep,
for the rest of it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. yep, you scanned it right.
um,
Okay, so if you're having trouble putting in the edges, start at the end of the line. Start with, then you don't have to start at the beginning. So if you go backwards and look for the repeating pattern, it should be easier. Okay, so anybody else? What did you get? Beside the lake beneath the trees.
Oh, I only got one of the lines.
Okay, which one? Beside?
I put B over B for being.
Okay, beneath, right, so beneath, is it beneath or beneath?
Maybe it should go over
Yeah, you hear over the beneath, yeah, definitely. Okay, so if you watch the earlier videos, you'll see a lot more detail about how to do this. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Okay, so beside the lake, so you got beneath, that's for sure. Okay. Other ones in that first line? What other ones do we have? Yeah.
side.
Side, okay. Other ones? Any? Yeah? Other ones? Trees. Great, okay. And then we have cups. Tell me where to put the cups. Every other syllable, don't all speak at once here. Okay, got it, okay. And now we're looking for a pattern. What pattern do we see? Cup one, cup one, cup one, cup one. So where are we going to put our edges? Every time we see a repeating pattern, so where do I put my first edge? And by the way, you can do this at the end if you want. Either way, it doesn't really matter whether you start at the beginning or the end, because rhythm doesn't really respect the beginning or the end, it's just rhythm. So where do we see repeating pattern? Okay, side, yep. Where's the next one? Right, so we have cup one, cup, so how many feet? So this is iambic, right? This is iambic, this one here. And how many of them do we have? 4. So that's why we call this a tetrameter. Tetrameter, okay. So a tetrameter means 4, right? Like a tetracycline must have 4 somethings in it, it's the word we know, so tetrameter. So we call it iambic tetrameter. Okay. So, and in fact, most of the lines of the poem are the same, right? The first couple of lines, I wander lonely as a cloud. You might hear the I as stressed. I think somebody heard the I stressed, but actually it can be stressed, but the wand and wander could be stressed more. So remember, it's always relative. Okay, always look for the one that's a little more stressed. So the next line, we said it's a mess. George said it's a mess.
I agree with you.
Okay, you say it's a mess too. So what do we know about this next line? Where do the wands go? This is definitely trickier. Where do you hear wands? Where?
Well,
Flut, yeah, absolutely, flut. Fluttering, and you, yeah, okay. And the next one? Is there one in dancing? What syllable? Dance, yep, okay. And then, yep. In. Okay, nice. Now some people might be uncomfortable with in. It's a tiny little word, right? It's like, remember I told you about the first line, I wandered lonely as a cloud? That as doesn't get much of a stress, but remember stress is relative. So the as gets more than the or the e. And here we have in gets more than the ing or the right? It's a more important word than the, and it's more important than ing for sure. So just always remember it's relative. Okay, dancing in the breeze. And one way to double check is to just exaggerate and see if it still makes sense. Fluttering and dancing in the breeze. It sounds weird, but it doesn't sound wrong. It just sounds weird. So you can always exaggerate and sound silly, and that's a great thing. That's one reason I love meter. It gives me a reason to sound silly, which I love to do. So, okay, in, and then the next one is breeze, right? Okay. Now let's put in our cups. And remember, it's just ears right now. There's no right or wrong, it's just what you hear. Fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So some people would hear maybe 1 cup, some might hear 2 cups. Fluttering, or is it fluttering, which Wordsworth might have said actually. Either way is fine. Okay, what about the and? Cup, right? Cup. So now what do? We don't have the usual pattern. This is where it's really handy to start at the end when you're putting your edges in. You can start at the end, and then it's a lot clearer what's going on. Here we do have cup, or if we go backwards, it's, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, or forwards, cup 1, cup 1. So where do we put an edge if we want to start at the end?
Between N and B.
Yeah, between N and the, and the next one?
Between before,
Yeah, in between, okay. And then here, right? Here we have 3 iams, just like the other line, no big deal, right? But here is where it's different. And I'm gonna cheat a little because I realize now that this, I think Wordsworth actually had an apostrophe here. I don't think he had like a whole word. Make sure he had an apostrophe. So I'm gonna put an apostrophe so we can see more clearly what's going on. So fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Because in those days, people didn't add extra syllables very often. They usually stuck to the number of syllables. So fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Okay, so what we have here in the first foot, we have a trochee, right? Couldn't choose. We have a trochee, right? This is an iambic poem, but we have a trochee in it. So remember how before when we found this spondy, it really underlined the meaning, right? At this moment, my conversion came high priced. It really gave us that feeling of the price being high. And here, if you had to say, why would he use a trochee at this moment? There are very few trochees in this poem, only 1 or 2 in the whole poem. So why is he using a trochee right here? Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. The daffodils are fluttering. Why at that moment? Why a trochee? What is the trochee giving us there? Let's say it aloud, those 2 lines together 3 times, and just listen to your body and the way you feel in your mouth and your body when you say that word fluttering, that trochee. What does that feel like? 1, 2, 3. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Another time, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Again, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. What happens when you get to that fluttering? How does it feel? What?
It's like fluttery.
It feels like fluttering, yeah. Does anybody feel kind of a rush? Like a freedom? Like a, it's like freedom, right? Power and freedom. So this is the thing, when you have this iambic dominance and all this oppression and imperialism and capitalism, all this iambic stuff. To me, the iambic sometimes, there are great things about iambic meter, but sometimes it can feel, when there's no other alternatives, it can feel like a machine in a factory, and that is when it was invented around the first industrial revolution. It's like boom, 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 forward, forward, forward. It is the meter of Western civilization. It's the meter that has really driven our culture to distraction. This is one of the main reasons that I am teaching metrical diversity, because you have to fight fire with fire. You cannot fight iambic pentameter with free verse. It doesn't work. Iambic pentameter will just win by default because there's no competition. You need other meters to come back, to come up, to give these other feelings. It's very important if we're gonna, if we're gonna pull this off, everybody, and survive as a species. The poets need to step up. I firmly know this. They need to learn these other meters and use them and get these other rhythms out there. So it's not just iambic or nothing, iambic or chaos. We need these other rhythms. The freedom, okay? The freedom. Look at these gorgeous poems. Can you believe nobody's writing this meter nowadays? It's ridiculous. Read these aloud. Isn't this fun? Do you love these poems? This is the meter of earth. This is a powerful meter. This is the meter that has given these wonderful poets, especially in the 20th century, African American poets, giving them a freedom and a power that is not dependent on the imperialist, capitalist, racist, sexist hegemony, war-making crap that has practically killed our whole planet right now. This is an alternative meter. It's the shadow, it's the underbelly, it's time for the shadow to come forth. And this is the reason that Auden chose this meter for his great, great gay lullaby and love song, love poem. It's the reason that Gwendolyn Brooks chose the Trochaic meter for her great epic poem about this wonderful young girl, Annie Allen. It's the reason that Wordsworth, 200 years earlier, he's even talking about daffodils, he saw that freedom coming out of that Trochaic meter. Emily Dickinson, same thing. There's a reason that trochees are used for witches' spells. There's a reason that Shakespeare put them in Macbeth. It's because they are the meter of revolution, they're the meter of freedom, they're the meter of coming back to the earth, coming back to the body, rebelling against the constraints that we are currently under the control of. This is a powerful meter for revolution and freedom. I urge you to try it and use it. And Nancy asked me to give you an assignment, or so I could give you an assignment. My assignment is to write a poem in Trochaic meter, and maybe even tonight, if you're going to stay with this class a little longer, write a poem in Trochaic meter, like right now, and bring it back, share it with each other, see if you can feel those meters together, read them aloud. Read them aloud. When you read them aloud, you can tell if the meter's working or not. If it's off something, that one's off. So just, this is our birthright as human beings, okay? This meter is not anything that you have to learn in school. If things are going well, you already know it as children, right? You're looking at it just like that, right? It's not rocket science. This is it's like food, okay? It's like, here's some great food, eat it, okay? So that's my assignment to you. Take some great Trochaic food, write a poem in it, and enjoy the deliciousness of this wonderful meter. And if there are any questions, we have about 5 minutes.
Do you have some handout on this?
What?
You have
Handout?
handout?
Yes, there will be a handout with those. You're going to get it tomorrow, for sure. And this is the one, reading this aloud is really going to be helpful. And there will be the videos to watch, so you can see it again. Other questions? Yeah?
Sorry, I have two questions. One, sorry, Dr. Lee. Can you explain one cup?
Yeah, these are markings. These are my own names because I've been teaching this for decades and I have come up with simple names. Some people call this an accent mark or an unstressed syllable mark or a brown. They're just simply to mark the strong syllables and the softer syllables. So you can tell them apart, and and to mark when things repeat. And you will get a handout from Nancy later that has more about it. And if you want more information, there's a book that I wrote called The Poet's Craft. It's a very accessible, fun book about how to write poetry, and it has all this stuff in it already. I'll put it down for you. Poet's Craft. It's been used at every level, from high school through graduate school, through adults. It's just the stuff. It's just the stuff.
Okay.
It has all my favorite poems in it.
Is there any commonality with your style if compared to Eastern, like to the Persian, the Hindu?
Persian and Hindi. Oh, yes. What a great question. I mean, the meter came into English from Persian poetry in the first place. A lot of our patterns did. So absolutely, and in Hindi they use, there's a lot of common things. What I'm trying to do is actually bring English back into that realm of complex meters that express different states of mind, different spirituals. Like in Hindu, there are hundreds of different metrical patterns that can be used for different purposes, different deities. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just this is a very basic version of it, but I'm bringing it back into English because we've lost so much. But yes, this is bringing us, and if you go back, I talked about this in the earlier lectures, it comes back to the original, before writing took over, meter was a way to memorize and listen, and all around the world, this was the language of poetry, which was the language of the spirit, and it was meter that created that power everywhere. Yeah, very much. And different languages will have different tools, but the patterns are the same and the use is the same. Even though depending on how the language works, there might be different things that are repeated, because the thing that's repeated is always connected to the language. So, for example, in Chinese, the meter would be based on tone. In Germanic languages, based on accent. In Hindi, I think it's based on syllable, but I'm not even sure. I'm learning more about that actually.
So what about Arabic?
That's a great question. Arabic poetry is so wonderful. Yeah, I think it might also be accent. It's some of those wonderful, very complex patterns. Yeah.
But like if you read the Quran,
Yeah.
when the Quran,
Yes.
it's more poetic than narrative.
Yes. Very much, very poetic. So yeah, and it's going to have a meter throughout, right? You can hear the regularity of it. Yeah. So I don't know if it's accent in that case, or a combination of accent and syllable, but yeah, there will be the same basic pattern, the same basic principle of having structural repetition. That's the essence of it. All of this is about structural repetition. It's about taking certain aspects of the language, whether it's, the wands and the cups, the stronger and softer syllables, or whether it's a musical pattern of another kind, or whether it's a repeating refrain, but taking something in the language, repeating it in a way that you can create a structure out of that's predictable. And this is something that most of us have been taught in the 21st century or the 20th century, even that, this is like old-fashioned and kind of somehow weak, or it means you're like not really experimental enough or original enough. That is, in my opinion, ridiculous. I mean, these are the powerful tools that make poetry last for centuries, and I encourage everybody, no matter what you're writing, to look for the patterns in your poetry, look for the elements that repeat, and create a structure that is predictable out of them, and your poem will start to fly and just take off. And in my experience, meter is the most powerful of all of those tools, because it's the most granular, it's the most subtle, it's the most, ubiquitous, it's everywhere. It doesn't interfere with the meaning at all, and yet it's in every single syllable. So it is, magic, I think. But you can do the same kind of effect with any structural repetition, really. And it's all in a poet's craft, all this stuff. One more question? I think our videotaper has to leave soon. But
Oh, sorry. You said you wanted to try to write a poem in, what was it?
trochees, in this meter here, right here. 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup. Just 4 trochees in every line.
Oh, Trochee.
Yeah, just try to write like 8 lines or longer, and have each line be 1 cup, 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 1 cup. Just do it 8 times. So you'll have 8 lines of trochaic tetramer.
So what about
I'm gonna
Finch?
ask Nancy to show me what you all did, especially if you had a chance to revise that.
Yeah,